Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Beijing police arrest 12 people after a fire claims at least 29 lives in a private hospital. HK Electric apologizes and blames equipment failure for a blackout on Hong Kong Island. And Fox News agrees to pay more than $780 million to a voting machine maker to settle a defamation case. At least 29 people have been killed in a fire which ravaged a private hospital in Beijing. 12 people, including the hospital chief, have been detained, with the authorities pointing to renovation work as the possible cause of the blaze. Security was tight outside Beijing Changfeng Hospital, one day after a devastating fire took more than 24 lives. Police officers lined the streets outside the compound, which partially suspended operation after the tragedy. The fire broke out at around noon yesterday at the hospital's inpatient department on the upper floors of the 8-story building. Reports suggested most patients in those wards were either elderly or receiving hospice care and were unable to escape. Others were forced to flee through the windows. In this clip, which went viral on the internet before it was taken down by censors, people were seen climbing out of the hospital's east wing through a rope made from bed sheets. Others were clinging onto compressor units of air conditioners installed on the building's exterior wall. The fire department said the blaze was put out in half an hour, but the damage was already done, and the extent of it was visible. 71 people were rescued, but 29 were confirmed dead as of 6 a.m. 26 of them were patients, most of whom were aged 70 or above, while the rest included a nurse. News of the deadly fire was absent from state media until this afternoon, when city officials held a press briefing. A moment's silence was observed for the victims. Zhao Yang, head of the rescue command, said the fire was likely caused by renovation works in the hospital, with sparks igniting combustible materials. Sun Haitao, lead investigator from the Public Security Bureau, confirmed that 12 people have been detained, including the head of the hospital. Stocks of the listed company which runs the private institution were suspended from trading. Locally, employees now face 2 years in jail plus a $10 million fine if they are found guilty of occupational safety breaches.
我認為議題係獲得在席議員以過半數贊成，我宣布議案獲得通過。
An amendment bill passed its third reading in the Legislative Council this evening, 11 months after it was gazetted. The previous maximum penalty was 6 months jail and a fine of $500,000. But the actual fine imposed was far lower, with convicted defendants in cases involving debts paying an average of $62,000 in 2020. The stiffer penalties follow a series of fatal industrial accidents in recent years. There were 25 in 2021. Labour Chief Chris Sun described the bill's passage as a milestone and thanked lawmakers for setting their differences aside. A power outage this afternoon forced shops in Hong Kong and Kowloon MTR stations to operate in darkness. This followed a blackout which affected Hong Kong Island about 12 hours earlier. Janice Low reports.
People on Hong Kong Island experienced a blackout at around midnight last night. Hang Fa Tsuen, like many other areas, was in total darkness. Traffic lights malfunctioned. Hong Kong Electric, the sole supplier of power to the island, apologized. It said the power outage was caused by equipment failure in the supply system during maintenance. But the company is investigating the root cause of the blackout. Electricity was fully restored before 2 a.m. By then, the Fire Services Department received more than 70 reports of people trapped in lifts and false fire alarms. At noon today, there was also a power cut in Hong Kong and Kowloon stations, but train services were not affected. However, some shops in the concourses could not use their electronic payment systems and accepted only cash as they operated in darkness. Power returned within 3 hours. The railway operator said a preliminary investigation showed that there was no connection with the earlier blackout. Janice Low, HKIBC.
9 people have been injured in a collision between a coach and a truck in Lai Chi Kok. Rescuers rushed to free passengers on the coach following the crash at around 7 a.m. at the intersection of the Ching Kwai Highway with Ching Cheng Road. Reports said the coach driver lost control of his vehicle and rammed into the truck in front. Traffic was disrupted as officers sealed off part of Ching Cheng Road to clear the wreckage. Hong Kong is capable of dealing with an expected surge of COVID infections, according to the health minister. Lo Chung Mao says although cases have risen, the city has built an immunity barrier against the virus. He believes that even if there's an outbreak, it will not threaten citizens or the medical system. Lo himself contracted COVID recently, preventing him from meeting top Beijing official Xia Baolong, who left Hong Kong yesterday after a 6-day visit. Lo admitted feeling a bit unwell, but said he has recovered. The amber rainstorm warning was in effect for 2 hours this morning, as a trough of low pressure brought unsettled weather to the region. Amid strong gust warnings, a vehicle in Tuen Mun was struck by what seemed to be solar panels blown off a building's rooftop. 6 people suffered minor injuries when wooden construction hoarding toppled at a busy footpath connecting a shopping mall in Sha Tin. Winds of around 100 kilometers per hour were recorded at one point at Star Ferry in Tsim Sha Tsui, while 20 to 30 millimeters of rain fell on the city throughout the day. The observatory said the showers will ease off over the weekend. Turning overseas, Fox News has agreed to pay nearly $800 million to a voting machine company to settle a defamation case. Dominion Voting Systems said its business suffered after the network claimed that equipment supplied by the firm had rigged the 2020 U.S. presidential election in favor of Joe Biden. Sachin Kafir reports.
The defamation trial in Delaware against Fox News was over before it began. Jurors had been sworn in when the judge announced that the case brought by Dominion Voting Systems had been resolved by the 2 parties. Fox agreed to pay $787.5 million, roughly half the amount that the voting machine maker had demanded. It is the largest settlement for a defamation case in U.S. history involving a media company.
Fox has admitted to telling lies about Dominion that caused enormous damage to my company, our employees, and the customers that we serve. Nothing can ever make up for that.
Dominion said its business suffered after Fox News supported and promoted a claim made by former President Donald Trump that the voting machines it provided in the 2020 election rigged the vote in favor of Joe Biden.
For our democracy to endure for another 250 years and hopefully much longer, we must share a commitment to facts. Misinformation will not go away. It may only get worse. This litigation cannot solve all problems. All of us remain ever vigilant to find common factual ground.
The groundbreaking settlement spares Fox chairman Rupert Murdoch and other network executives from testifying in court. But analysts generally agree that the case has severely undermined Fox's credibility.
We don't know totally
Sachin
for sure
Katwi,
that there's going to be a
HKIBC.
trial because there are a lot.
Two teenagers in the U.S. state of Iowa have admitted killing a teacher who had given one of them a bad grade in his Spanish exam. Jeremy Goodell and his friend Willard Miller both pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. They used a baseball bat to kill the 66-year-old teacher before dumping her body in a park in Fairfield, about 160 kilometers southeast of Des Moines. The murder took place 2 years ago, when the defendants were 16. They faced between 25 years and life in prison. A helicopter has rescued 11 Indonesian fishermen who went 6 days without food and water on a desolate island off the northwestern coast of Australia.
The aircraft wasn't in a position to land on the island, it was too sandy, so they had to conduct winch recoveries, which in itself is a challenging task. The time of day meant that nightfall was upon the crew during the rescue, so they had to transition to using night vision goggles.
The fishermen were spotted by Australian border police during a routine surveillance mission. They had been on 2 boats, which were hit by a powerful cyclone last week. One vessel carrying 10 men ran aground on the island. The other boat, also with 10 fishermen, sank. 9 of it drowned, while the 10th person reached the island after spending 30 hours in the water. All 11 survivors are recovering in an Australian hospital. Chiang Mai-su is mourning the death of the last giant panda in Thailand. Online footage showed 21-year-old Lin Hui with a nosebleed yesterday. She was placed under the care of Thai and Chinese vets, but her condition worsened and she died early this morning. Lin Hui had been scheduled to return to China in October. She and her mate Chuang Chuang were loaned to Thailand 20 years ago. The male panda died in 2019 from heart failure. In 2009, the couple had a cub, Lin Ping, who was sent to China 4 years later. The money in Hong Kong banks will fall to a 15-year low of $49.2 billion tomorrow. This follows the latest intervention by the Monetary Authority to support the weakening local currency and preserve the peg with the US dollar. The shrinking aggregate balance in the banking system could prompt the city's commercial lenders to raise their prime rates next month. But another possibility is for the de facto central bank to dip into the exchange fund bills market to prevent tight liquidity. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended the day down by 282 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent was down $8.20. Meituan picked up 30 cents, but Alibaba was down $2.55. JD.com down $4.30. Anta Sports down $1.25, while Kuaishou Technology was down $2.40. The forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 8.58, the pound sterling at 9.74, while the Australian dollar at 5.26. And finally, in Europe, the London FTSE is currently down 16 points. Interest rates in Britain are expected to keep rising as inflation remains in double digits. The Consumer Price Index for March rose 10.1% from a year ago. That was down slightly from 10.4% in February. But it's of little comfort to ordinary households. Food prices surged 19% from a year earlier, marking the biggest increase in nearly 50 years. Wage rises, meanwhile, lag far behind. On to the weather now. Occasional heavy showers with thunderstorms tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 22 and 27 degrees. Mostly unsettled weather as we head into the weekend. That's our main news for Wednesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Good night.